you realize that these are real people. They're just like me. They all started with zero experience, but they followed a proven path, and now they are location independent, living their dream, really enjoying what they do. They've built an amazing business. They have a team. They're out of it in terms of the day-to-day running.
And I certainly resonate with that story, Lewis. You painted a perfect picture there of being in that 9 to 5, but something in the back of your mind is telling you that this isn't where you want to be long term.
I am going to be an entrepreneur. I am going to learn to do it because the reward at the end of it is worth the struggle that lays ahead. And I was okay with figuring out the answers. I didn't have them, but I will find them.
It sounds like similar to you. It gave you that idea that there's something else out there to go after.
It might seem daunting and this apprehensive, exciting fear when you first start. But if you can embrace that, then, the idea of being able to live and work from anywhere in the world in these amazing exotic locations, that excitement to me.
Because I had zero experience as well, Lewis. Both of our jobs, interestingly, couldn't be much further away from running e-commerce businesses.
Yeah, I think my mindset was that when I first started, I didn't have the answers. I knew I didn't have the answers, and I was okay with that because I realized that the biggest limitation and the biggest obstacle that I had to overcome was Welcome to the Dropship Unlocked podcast, your key to unlocking the secrets of high-ticket dropshipping. I'm Lewis Smith, founder of Dropship Unlocked, and with me is our client success coach, James Eardley. Now, when we're not recording podcast episodes, we're running our own e-commerce businesses and helping aspiring entrepreneurs launch their own high-ticket dropshipping businesses. So if you're ready to learn how to build your own 6 or even 7-figure business, pick up a copy of my book, The Home Turf Advantage, whether you're looking to replace your income or launch a side hustle. I wrote this book as a roadmap to help you launch a low-maintenance, high-profit e-commerce business that gives you the freedom to spend more time with your family, travel the world, and work on your own terms. Ready to join us? Visit htabook.com to get your copy today. Now sit back, relax, and let's unlock your potential with the Dropship Unlocked podcast.
Picture this. You're stepping into the world of e-commerce with zero prior experience, armed with nothing but a burning desire to succeed. Sounds daunting, right? Well, what if I told you that both Lewis and I have been in that exact same position with zero prior experience, but we did it anyway. Today, we're going to be uncovering that raw, unfiltered journey to find out how we went from that position to where we are today. This episode is perfect for you if you feel paralyzed by that I don't know where to start syndrome. By the end of our chat, you'll learn how going from zero to dropshipping hero is more achievable than you've ever imagined before. So, Lewis, we'll start off at the start of your journey. Can you paint a picture for us? What was your life like right before you started your first e-commerce business?
Yeah, of course, I'd be happy to. I'm keen to share my experiences today, which will hopefully resonate with many people who are also looking to start an online business, but maybe have no prior experience, just like I didn't and just like you didn't either, James. So yeah, for me, I remember waking up every morning. It was like Groundhog Day. You wake up to that jarring sound of the alarm in the morning and you kind of jolt upright and remember, oh man, I've got a full day of work ahead of me today. I've got to commute into the office, and I always knew that it was yet another predictable day that awaited me. And I was deep into that 9 to 5 corporate grind. Every day I felt that the day was eerily similar to many days that had come before. And so I look back on that period now and it all kind of blends into one. I couldn't really even differentiate the days from one another. And I'm sure if you're in the midst of that right now, you'll be able to relate to that. And I was only inching closer to someone else's vision of what success was defined as, but that wasn't necessarily my own, or I was starting to realize that it wasn't my own. I was kind of just following the motions of what everybody who was further than me in that career path deemed as their definition of success. It was like, you work hard, you meet your KPIs, you get promoted, you work up, you get a promotion, you take on more responsibility, you start managing a team. And it was, it was certainly a definition of success, probably a more traditional definition of success. But my definition of what success meant to me was changing, and it was morphing into, well, actually, it's not just about the money and the job title status. For me, it's about freedom of time and freedom of location. It's about that complete autonomy and control over my life, working on my terms. I wanted to be able to call the shots. Now, back then, I didn't know how I would ever achieve that. It was almost just like something that was in the back of my mind, which meant that I couldn't truly enjoy what I was doing. It's like, if you're ever binge watching a TV series, that after a while you realize you don't even enjoy it that much, but you can't stop watching it because you've already invested so much time into it. You're like 3 series in by now. It's like, oh, well, like I can't back out now. I kind of felt like that on my career path. I'd gone to uni, I'd got the degree, I'd done the first few years, I'd finished the graduate scheme. It was like, I can't back out now, surely, right? So the stakes seemingly feel quite high. And so I think a lot of our listeners might resonate with this. It's easy to get trapped in that loop of comfort and security. I've talked about it before, the golden handcuffs. Make it very, very nice and comfortable, and almost so much so that your head never gets turned to look elsewhere. You never question the path that you're on, and it's done that way by design. And it's that consistent paycheck at the end of the month that kind of keeps us tethered to the route that we're on. It's like when you're scrolling endlessly through social media, in the evening, and you go down like a rabbit hole of social media scrolling, and after a while you just get that empty feeling where you're like, what have I done with the last 30 minutes of my life? It's just nothing. And I think after a while you realize that going through the motions and just scrolling, going through your career, if it's not the path that you want to be on, deep down you're going to feel this growing urge that you want to create something, you want to venture out, you want to, most importantly to me, it was that desire to control my time, because I was at the point of wanting to start a family soon, and I thought, I don't want to be the kind of dad that can't be there for their children. I want to show them as an example of what can be done when you choose lifestyle design. You choose to take the reins and control what you do with your own life. So yeah, I had to start by asking myself whether I felt that the actions that I was taking on that career path were actually even taking me towards my goal or not.
It reminds me of that saying where it's the path you walk today will dictate your future tomorrow. And so you've got to think about where you're going. And I certainly resonate with that story, Lewis. You painted a perfect picture there of being in that 9 to 5, but something in the back of your mind is telling you that this isn't where you want to be long term. And it just nags at you, and you can't quite enjoy your full-time job because there's more out there. So it's quite clear that there was a craving, there was something in you that was looking to get away from that 9 to 5 job. So would you say that there was a pivotal moment for you that made you leave your job and shift away from that in towards your first e-commerce business?
Yeah, for some people, I think there's build up, this crescendo of like high tension, and then, some dramatic event occurs and it's the final straw that breaks the camel's back. For me, it wasn't like that. It was more of a pull rather than a push, I think, that initially triggered it for me. I was actually out for a meeting with a colleague one day, and we were meeting in this hotel in East London just for a coffee and to kind of go through some numbers or statistics or something. And it was one of these trendy kind of hotels where people like work in the lobby. And I remember walking in and seeing all these entrepreneurs in their like hoodies and working with their MacBooks, and they had their cool oat milk flat whites, and they were cool entrepreneurs. And I just thought, I don't know, I looked at them initially and just thought, well, that's cool. That it's like a Tuesday afternoon or something, and they're just sitting there working and chatting and seemingly having fun, very relaxed, very low stress. And I remember the colleague that I was with said, look at those guys, have you ever considered starting a business or running your own business? And she said, I'd always seen you actually as the entrepreneur type. Have you ever considered the startup world? And it was funny. It was the first time anyone had ever said it to me in those terms. People had always said I was quite entrepreneurial and, I could see you running a business one day, but not in the sense of like a serious conversation at work, someone almost like enabling me and saying, it seems like you would be good at that. And I thought it really stuck with me. And it's funny because I thought the internal dialogue, and people again hopefully can relate to this, is if when someone first tells you that, you think, really? Could I? Like, what made them say that about me? What traits do I have that make me a potentially good entrepreneur? Like, do I have the right to be an entrepreneur? Do I have the right to start my own business? And that for me is the key. It's the belief hurdle that is, and you'll learn it as you start your journey. It's that sense of self-worth and that confidence in your own ability that is the biggest thing holding 99% of entrepreneur or potential entrepreneurs back. I went home that night and I Googled, how do you start a business? Like what are good businesses to start? And I saw an audiobook advertised on Audible, and it was The 4-Hour Workweek by Tim Ferriss. And so I binged, listened to that and read that for the next few days. And that was extremely eye-opening as a book and a concept. And it made me realize that other people are able to live life on their own terms. And so when you kind of hear the stories of people in that book, and he mentions dropshipping as a perfect business model for location independence, lifestyle design, I realized that, I needed to acknowledge that there are other paths here available, and that was breaking my former belief, because everybody I was surrounded by in my job, my life, was on their career path, on their trajectory, surrounded by their colleagues. And it becomes kind of like an echo chamber of self-fulfilling prophecies, right? It's like, well, of course, if you're surrounded by people like that, you're never going to question outside of it. You're just going to be told, hey, this would be the promotion to go for, or this would be the move to make, or because they're thinking within the confines of the industry or the company that they're in. But that, I think, is the hardest bit. It's like a self-imposed limitation looking back on it now. And I think there's a story that illustrates this perfectly. So if you imagine an elephant in a circus, right, a young elephant, and it's tethered to a wooden stick as a baby. It's a very cruel circus, by the way. And as the elephant grows, it becomes strong enough to break free from the wooden stake that it's tied to, but it never tries. Now, the reason why it never tries is because it was conditioned to believe that the stick that it was tied to as a baby was unbreakable. It was this constraint it couldn't break free from. Now, this is obviously just a metaphor, but it mirrors perfectly that invisible limitation that people put on themselves because they've been conditioned by society or by their circumstances to think that they could never break free from the 9 to 5. We're kind of trained to follow that set path, but knowing that there was another way excited me. And it was like someone had just removed the rope or the wooden stake from the ground. Right? So for anyone out there who's listening to this now and feeling that kind of itch for a change, start by consuming content around what you're interested in. Start with podcasts, YouTube channels, blogs. Immerse yourself, because you need to change that internal narrative and dialogue and lift that self-imposed limitation so that you realize, hey, it's not just people on the internet or like people on TV that do this stuff. I actually could do this as well. And it's that knowledge that you start to accumulate that breeds confidence. I know for me, the more I learned about e-commerce and the opportunities that it presented, the more excited I got and the more I felt empowered to eventually take that leap.
Yeah, I used to think that consuming lots of knowledge and podcasts and books out there was passive and that it wouldn't make a difference. But I reflect now, and by doing all of that and by consuming yourself into that world of e-commerce or whichever goal you want to follow, you actually start to connect the dots in your mind and to realize that it's actually possible. And if you don't, you get into that sort of groupthink mentality of the work every day or the people around you, the friends that you're with, and you don't start to think that that's even a world that's possible. So I think the first thing to do is just to consume yourself and just to realize that there is a possibility of a different lifestyle. And from that, the dots start to connect. My story is very similar to yours, Lewis. So I also started in a 9 to 5 job, and I had that in the back of my mind, niggling at me, knowing that there was more out there. But it wasn't until I started to come away from the 9 to 5 sort of funnel that you're pushed through and start to read personal development books and 4-hour work week. And I started to realize that there was another life and more options out there. It was actually in the 4-hour work week, and you reminded me of it when you said about meeting those or seeing those entrepreneurs in that hotel. And it was a Tuesday, because Tim Ferriss is quite clear that the goal that you should have when you design your lifestyle is that your Tuesday should be the goal. And what he means by that is, how do you want to spend a normal Tuesday? That really dictates how your life is. What does a normal Tuesday look like for you? Whereas a lot of people focus on the flashy driving a Ferrari through Italy, which you might do once a year, or on the yacht on a Greek island. Instead of that, how does your normal Tuesday look? And that's really that's sort of an idea, and that shows you what your life is as a whole. So I got hooked on that, and that gave me, and it sounds like similar to you, it gave you that idea that there's something else out there to go after. And yet the condition was still the same. You still had zero experience. You had no idea about how to start an e-commerce business. So how did you take action despite this?
Yeah, well, firstly, I love that Tuesday analogy. I think it's such a great thing, because you think of now a Tuesday in your life and you think, am I doing, well, like both of us running e-commerce businesses, am I doing now on a Tuesday what I would have dreamt of doing back when I first started? And yeah, I think that having that freedom and control, it doesn't need to be this elaborate James Bond style Tuesday, right? It's just an incredible honor to be able to spend it with friends, family, doing whatever I want, wherever in the world. I could travel, and maybe I don't travel every Tuesday, but I could be anywhere running this business, and that's really powerful. So yeah, I love that. Yeah, I think my mindset was that when I first started, I didn't have the answers. I knew I didn't have the answers. And I was okay with that, because I realized that the biggest limitation And the biggest obstacle that I had to overcome was lifting that self-imposed limitation of belief of like a self-identity of I'm not an entrepreneur. I could never do that. Now it was, I am going to be an entrepreneur. I am going to learn to do it because the reward at the end of it is worth the struggle that lays ahead. And I was okay with figuring out the answers. I didn't have them, but I will find them because I know that I won't give up until I do. So you don't need to have everything. You just need to start, and the rest will kind of come with time. It will emerge because the questions, if you're open to learning the answers, the questions will unfold as you're going through it. So I was committed to learning, absorbing as much as I could to give me that confidence to get started. And I think I clarified in my mind where I wanted to be in the future. So I really started to visualize every day, like, this is what I want my life to look like. This is how I want it to be. This is what I want a typical Tuesday to be. And I used that as fuel to push myself out of my comfort zone. And for me, a big part of that was the ability to work from anywhere. It was, could I picture myself running an e-commerce business from a beach in Thailand, in Bali, in Vietnam, and have my wife, Becky, there with me and be able to go and, see the world and do all these amazing things that people usually reserve for like once in a lifetime trips or holidays, but do it whilst I'm still building my career, growing my empire, and being able to provide for my family all the while, whilst really being driven and challenged and enjoying it. And I thought, that's the dream. If I can figure that out, that's amazing. And looking back now, I'd say we're well on track to be in that position, right? And you're always growing, you're always evolving. But if my former self could see my life now, I think I'd be pretty happy with where we'd reached. So yeah, that's, I think, what got me to take action.
Yeah, inspirational, having that reward at the end of the tunnel. And what's great about that is available for everyone to do. That first step isn't reserved for certain types of people. Anyone can decide where they want to be and visualize that every morning and start to put things in place to get there. You don't need to be in any sort of position to do that. You could start doing that today. And I did that as well, Lewis. I knew I wasn't where I wanted to be, but I had to get clear first on where I wanted to be before I could start making any progress towards that goal. So you mentioned there that you knew that you were going to have to grow and that you were going to get uncomfortable to get out of your comfort zone to actually go towards the goal and the dreams that you had. So there is that fear associated with that. So I want to know, how did you handle that fear that comes along with going after something that you've never done before?
Yeah, there is a fear when you first start, but I think you need to learn to harness that fear and see the excitement that surrounds it and that's on the other side of the fear. When you're first learning to drive as a kid, and it's like this exciting concept of independence and, wow, I'm going to be able to travel anywhere because I've got, I'll have my car and I'll be able to drive anywhere. And you first get in the car for your first lesson and it's a little bit daunting, right? You're like, oh, wow, I've got a lot of responsibility here, this huge machine that I'm in control of. And, people's lives are at risk literally here. So I need to take this seriously. And it is a bit daunting, a bit scary. But for those of us that have been driving for years now, do you feel like that now? I don't even think about it. If I go and get a coffee in the car, I'm just in a state of like flow. I'm just, I don't even think about it. I find it very relaxing driving because it's kind of like my mind can just switch off and I can just, carry on with my day. So that happens with business over time as well. It might seem daunting and this apprehensive, exciting fear when you first start, but if you can embrace that, then the idea of being able to live and work from anywhere in the world in these amazing exotic locations, that excitement to me outweighs the fear and the need to overcome that fear when you're first starting. So yeah, being part of a community really helps. I think that's something that's crucial. When I had no experience, it was seeing and hearing other people achieve their dreams. That was what really inspired me, because I filled every moment of my day with podcast content. Once I decided that I wanted to become an entrepreneur, I wish I'd had the Dropship Unlocked podcast and the Dropship Unlocked program back then, because it would have been something I would have been immersed in, but unfortunately it didn't exist. So obviously there were, slightly semi-unrelated business podcasts that I would listen to, and there are podcasts out there on e-commerce, but I think sometimes they're not defined on a specific proven model, and that can become a little bit confusing as you're getting started. But nevertheless, it's surrounding yourself with like-minded individuals, and I don't mean physically as well. You don't have to actually be with them, because you might still be in your job at the moment. You might be using this time on your commute home or to the office to surround yourself with people. But I mean, like, immerse your mind with them, because that accelerates your growth. You realize that these are real people. They're just like me. They all started with zero experience, but they followed a proven path, and now they are location independent, living their dream, really enjoying what they do. They've built an amazing business. They have a team. They're out of it in terms of the day-to-day running. And that's what we hear people joining us at Dropship Unlocked saying every day. It's that we say, why did you join us? Why did you choose to join us? And they say, I saw that other people who were doing this already had as little experience as me when they first started. And I thought, why can't I do it? And when they say that, that always makes me smile, because that's the exact realization. That phrase, why can't I, is the same thing that I had. It's that penny drop moment which gets you to take action and make that first step, whether that's just getting a book to start your learning journey, or joining a community, or booking a call to speak with some specialists who can guide and help you. Like whatever it is, that first step, once you realize that you're no different to the hundreds of others who took that first step and have succeeded before you, you've overcome the biggest hurdle, which is just the shift in your own belief. That's the only thing that really holds you back, because once you've got that out of the way, you just need to figure out the steps along the way and take action.
Such an empowering moment, actually. I think when you realize that, why can't I do it? If somebody else has done it, then it must be possible for me to do it as well. I'm no different to them. And instead of looking at other people and thinking that there must be something different about them, that takes power away from you. Instead of doing that, give yourself back the power and say, why can't I do that? Other people with no more experience than you or I had achieved those goals. And so that gave me the confidence to get started when I started, because I had zero experience as well, Lewis. Both of our jobs, interestingly, couldn't be much further away from running e-commerce businesses. I worked at a housing association, which was not for profit. And essentially, it's, I think, as far away from running an e-commerce online business as you can possibly get. And yet, still, from that and no experience of running any business, and I don't have entrepreneurs in my close family, and still, I was able to learn the right things because I had that thought process that we're talking about here, about why can't I? And I gave myself that permission to go after the goals that I had. Also, something you've mentioned there, which is probably as important, if not more, is being around like-minded people, getting around a community that will support you and teach you as well, especially if you've got zero experience. So would you say that having a like-minded community around you, would that probably be the most important factor that helped you get to where you are today?
Definitely. Yeah, without a doubt. I mean, I remember joining the first e-commerce forum that I was part of, and immediately you're just exposed to a world of knowledge. It's like someone's turned on the fire hose and you're trying to drink from the information coming out of it. It's like people were sharing their challenges, their solutions, their strategies. There were people doing private label, print on demand, drop shipping, high ticket, like Amazon, so much stuff. And yeah, I mean, being immersed in that world accelerates your learning journey. So I didn't feel alone on the journey anymore, even though people were potentially, there was a lot of conflicting advice and information. There wasn't one proven model that people were all following. Just being part of a community, even though it was online, and even though it wasn't, specific to the market I was in or the UK, it was kind of this global forum. It just gave me a bit more of a direction, accountability. I'd, be able to share like my weekly tasks and goals, and it pushed me to stay committed when, the temptation was there to avoid it and maybe think, let fear get in the way. And, when people do those crazy like assault courses and they're up in the air swinging from bars and jumping across platforms and stuff, they always have a safety net beneath them, right? The reason for that is it enables them to have a go, enables them to attempt something that they otherwise wouldn't do. And that is what like having a community is like. It's when you stumble, when you do fall, which as a beginner, you will. So you might as well accept that today and kind of get over that, because that's going to happen at some point. So once you're okay with it, then that's like saying, okay, well, the safety net's there. The community is there to pick me back up when I do stumble. And yeah, to anyone starting out, I'd say one of the biggest hacks is just find your tribe, because it could be a total game changer. We've had people in our community make lifelong friends from within there and then go on to create incredible businesses.
I completely agree. It's so interesting that you cite that as the most important factor as well. It is brilliant. I don't know whether you were the same, but I know when I first started, I thought my success is down to me. I don't need any help from anyone else. I can work this out for myself. But I didn't realize how much power I was taking away from myself by thinking I could go out and do it on my own. It's only when I started to realize that there are people out there that have the same goals as me that I could then share those goals with them and push each other up together. So yeah, was that similar for you? Did you initially want to go out on your own?
Yeah, I think so. The temptation is there to just be a lone ranger and work on a desert island and say, no, I'll figure this stuff all out myself. But the trouble is that you will come up against a lot of challenges that you could have just avoided if you'd swallowed your pride and accepted that there might be some unknown unknowns out there that you may not even know are going to become problematic. So heed other people's advice and warnings, and don't be a busy fool working on stuff that you could have avoided in the first place by following a proven path.
Yeah, it feels like you almost have to put your ego to one side and allow people to help you out. That was the case for me. And now it's one of my favorite things of being a coach at Dropship Unlocked is just to interact with other people that have the same goals and really inspirational people within that program. And I love being around it and just sharing each other's success. It's a great place to be. And you mentioned that, of course, there'll be obstacles and challenges as with growing any business. And so that's when we can harness the power of a community and a group to help you out through those difficult times. So we'll touch on that now. I want to hear about the lows, the challenges that you had when you went from having no experience to where you are now. And also talk to me a little bit about some of the wins as well, the successes that you've had now that you've gone after your goals.
Yeah, of course. I recall an early niche that I was sure was going to be a hit. It was a winning niche. I was going to make it big time with that niche. And I invested a lot of time, way more time than I should have done, into setting everything up and getting caught up in the busy work, the technicals, the website setup, the email, like doing all of the stuff that, yes, it matters, but it's secondary to the foundations and the fundamentals of the business, right? And I made that mistake of trying to compensate for lack of solid business strategy and foundations with just getting stuck into the minute details and technical aspects. Now, of course, it flopped, obviously, which when I look back now is obvious that it flopped because I was procrastinating and disguising that procrastination through what I thought was action, but it was really just going through the motions again and doing it because I kind of had the blinkers on. I refused to take input and advice from outside. And I don't even know if I refused. I think I was just maybe oblivious or naive to it at that point. So I give myself a pretty hard time. But looking back, I think if I could talk to myself back then now, I'd say, hey, don't try and figure this all out on your own. Don't reinvent the wheel. There are people out there who are doing this every day. Just follow a step-by-step process. But I mean, the thing is that failure taught me more about market research than any success would have. It would have almost been worse if it started working, because I would have thought, oh, well, is this it? Then I've made a few sales here and there. But because it completely flopped, I realized, okay, something must have gone wrong here. There must be some reason why I've messed up here. And I think that the thing to remember is failure isn't the opposite of success. It's part of it. It's part of success. So you have to learn to embrace failure. It's like, when you watch those online gamers play video games online and they're like, they must have done those levels or missions hundreds of times. Like this might be their 200th attempt, the one that they then show and upload to YouTube and show the world. And it's incredible because you see them flying through the missions so seamlessly, knowing exactly like every place to go and complete the game perfectly. But what you don't see is that it's probably their 200th attempt at the same level. So now with this, imagine if you could have them as your coach, you would get to basically start from attempt 201. And it's like that in business. Don't go into the game and be like, okay, well, I'll just try and figure this all out myself. You'll be doing the 200 attempts yourself, which is time consuming, expensive, frustrating. Start from attempt 201. Stand on the shoulders of the people that came before you and make sure that you are benefiting. Don't let all of the failures they made be in vain. Make sure that you're using them to your advantage as well. It will make your journey a much more enjoyable and smoother process to getting up and running. So that's the failures. I mean, it's not only failures that are worth remembering, but they are probably the most valuable part. But of course, I also fondly remember the highs as well and some of the key milestones. I mean, even like just making your first e-commerce sale, an incredible feeling, and had been in bed all day. And I just remember seeing the cha-ching come through and it was like a £900 order. And I just thought, wow, I've just made more in profit from that one sale today, having not got out of bed, than I would have made if I'd have got out of bed, commuted to work, gone and done the job, commuted back, come home, not seen my family, been knackered, spent loads on fuel, like all of these things. And you just think, wow, I've leveraged my time. It's incredible. So that was one of the first key milestones. I think everyone will remember their first sale. And then the first £10,000 month is a really nice one to see. And the first £50,000 month's incredible. And then we made our first £300,000 revenue month as well, which was like, wow, how far can we scale this? Like when you start to realize that your time is no longer a limitation and you've created a scalable model, as we teach with the home turf advantage, it's amazing. And each of those milestones allows you to look back and reflect on how far you've come.
Yeah, and so important to look back and reflect on how far you've come. And the key to all this, and the topic of this episode, is that all of those successes that you've been able to achieve came from a position where you had zero experience in e-commerce, but you started, and step by step, from being in that position, which I'm sure lots of people can resonate and put themselves on that part of the story as well. You've been able to go through all of that because you just took it step by step and got to each level, up to a £300,000 revenue month. And also, potentially you're downplaying it as well, Lewis. I know you're off to Greece tomorrow. You've got a month booked to live in and work in Mexico next year. And you're speaking after Stephen Bartlett at a speaking event later this year as well. So from zero experience to all of that, it's so inspirational to see for everyone else, but it's nice to know that everyone else can achieve that with the same hard work, determination. So let's finish off this sort of section of the program and the podcast by speaking about how people can take those first steps. How can they go from zero experience to being where you are today?
Yeah, I think that feeling of not being ready yet is something that I'm very, very familiar with, and I'm sure many of our listeners can relate. If you join a community, you're giving yourself a network of people, a safety net of people who can understand your struggles, they can offer you insights, and they can just be there during the highs and lows of the journey. You want to share the wins with somebody. Otherwise, what's a win if you can't share it with anybody? But also, when you hit those lows, you're not alone. And that's really not to be understated. It's not just about the tactical advice. That's part of it. But it's also about that emotional support that you'll inevitably need throughout your journey, because you don't want to be working on a desert island when you don't have to. It can be a lonely road and a lonely journey. And it can be lonely at the top when you start to really make it and become a successful entrepreneur. You don't just want to be on your own. You want to have other people at your level that you can connect with and network with. So yeah, I think structured training is another lifeline. When you're starting from scratch, having a step-by-step guide, a blueprint, if you like, that it just makes the whole process less intimidating. It's like watching the video game streamer on YouTube or Twitch do their 200th version of that mission so that you can just jump in and do exactly what they did, but make it slightly better. So it kind of cuts down that trial and error. And if you're learning from people who've already walked the path, then it's going to make your journey so much more enjoyable, which is the key thing. We want to enjoy running this business as well, right? And for anyone who's listening now and might be feeling a little bit hesitant, I've documented my own journey and insights in my book, The Home Turf Advantage. It'll serve as that starting blueprint for many, and you can grab your copy from htabook.com. Remember, every expert was once a beginner. So the key is to just start and equip yourself with the right tools and the right community. Just a quick heads up, if you'd like to share your questions, stories, successes, or challenges, you can email us directly at podcast@dropshipunlocked.com. And you never know, we might even feature you on the next podcast episode.
Also, if you want access to today's show notes or any of the resources we've mentioned in the episode today, then head over to dropshipunlocked.com/podcast. We also have a small favour to ask of you. If you enjoyed the show so far, you could take a minute to leave us a rating and review on your podcast platform of choice.
You wouldn't believe how much your reviews help us grow the podcast. We'll even read out some of our favourites on the next episode. So if you want to be featured on the show, please do go ahead and leave us a review today. Thanks so much for your support. We really couldn't do it without you, and we absolutely love hearing what you think of the podcast.
Okay, now let's answer a question from a listener. And remember, to get your questions answered on a podcast episode soon, all you need to do is email podcast@dropshipunlocked.com. So this question has come in from Martin, and he got his question in by commenting on a YouTube video version of an episode. And his question for you, Lewis, is: would suppliers deal with me if I built an awesome website and was honest over the phone?
Thank you for your question, Martin. Yeah, I mean, having an awesome website is going to put you in great stead when you're first starting, and certainly being honest over the phone will take you a long way as well. So those are the foundations. You're right with that. I mean, there are still some other essentials that you need to have in place to make sure that you can work with the best suppliers out there. I mean, things like having your limited company set up, having that information visible, available to hand. If they're going to work with you, then they'll want you to have a serious limited company structure set up in all likelihood. Things like having a professional phone number and email address, no Gmails or Hotmails, no mobile numbers. You want to look like a real reputable business when you're approaching them. Having basic knowledge of their product as well is going to help, Martin. So making sure that you've researched the brand you're contacting and you're not just going through a list of suppliers, kind of giving them a generic script, but really making sure that you know exactly what their products are and how they're differentiated from their competitor brands as well. And then explaining the strategy that you have for selling and marketing their products. Suppliers may not want to work with you if they don't feel confident that you can really serve them as a brand and generate them lots more revenue, a whole new revenue stream, and really add to the value of their brand, build their brand, expand the market, and bring more customers to them than they currently have from their network of existing retailers. And of course, we cover all of this in detail, in way more depth inside our program. We have a supplier contact phone and email script that's come from years of trial and error and hundreds of our members' feedback inside the community, which we've figured out a way of kind of answering all of the frequently asked questions, any objections they may have, to make sure that you get to sign the best suppliers when you're first starting. So with those key things in place, as well as your honesty and your pre-built awesome website, Martin, you'll definitely be able to sign some high quality UK suppliers.
Awesome. Thank you, Lewis. Enjoy those conversations, Martin, and have that advice in mind. We're also going to highlight a recent review that's come in from Daniela, and this is a brilliant review, Lewis. So I'm going to read it out for the podcast. So she has said, "I just want to thank you for what you're doing. I've listened to all of your podcast episodes on Spotify, and it really helped me a lot. My favorite so far is episode 10, Timing Your Success. Is there ever a perfect time to start?" And she said that it keeps her motivated and inspired to start her own business.
Thank you so much for your kind review, Daniela. We're really glad to hear that you've been enjoying the podcast and you've listened to every single episode as well. So amazing work. You've really absorbed it and hopefully you're taking on board what we're advising, and looking forward to helping you launch your business. If you'd like to make an impact on the podcast, it couldn't be simpler. Just leave us a review on your favorite podcast platform. Alternatively, if you prefer to watch on YouTube, drop us a comment on this video. Your review may just be featured on our next episode. And before we sign off today, consider sharing this episode with a friend. Perhaps you know someone who you think has all the traits to be an entrepreneur, just like that colleague did for me at work. And you could bring someone along with you on your journey to dropshipping success.
Thanks for joining us on this episode of the Dropship Unlocked podcast. We hope you found the discussion both inspiring and entertaining.
If you're ready to begin your own high-ticket dropshipping journey, then here's what to do next. I've taken all of the years of my own experience, both in running my e-commerce businesses and teaching hundreds of others how to do the same, and I've condensed it all into my book, The Home Turf Advantage. It's your comprehensive guide designed to help you create your own e-commerce business. And you can grab your copy today at htabook.com.
Stay connected by subscribing to the podcast. This way you'll never miss an episode packed with valuable insights. And if you enjoyed what you heard today, please leave us a review. Your feedback motivates us and we love sharing our favourite reviews on future episodes.
And thank you for deciding to spend your time with us today. We really appreciate you and we look forward to sharing more high-ticket dropshipping insights with you on our next episode of the Dropship Unlocked podcast.